Well, hi, everybody. I was looking forward to it too. Let's see who's here. Is everybody staying warm? I've got my Icelandic sweater on today. I was telling Shannon, I'm not much for wearing turtlenecks because they just always feel so constraining. But the idea of having a turtleneck in my super warm Icelandic wool, I feel warmer just looking at myself. So, how are you all? Are you staying warm? I did this yesterday with my students since they're also kind of around the state. Let's see who's in the coldest part of the state right now. I got to get, hang on, let me get my phone. Where's my phone?
This is unfair. Jen Jaros is going to win. She's a TV. I mean, come on.
It's not always true. Not always true. We're at -9 right now, according to my phone.
Yeah, where's
What
my
are you?
Mankato says -10.
Ooh.
We have this situation in Duluth where the lake is warmer than the air, so it helps us in some situations.
-11.
Well done, Lucy.
Anybody have more than a -11? Not that we're vying for any awards or anything. And Julia, it is so great to see you back.
Oh, I'm glad to be back. I've had a lot of IEP meetings and lunch bunch meetings and right on Friday at noon.
Yay. So any of us who have kind of recently joined in the last few months, Julia was one of our steady goers all summer and into the early fall. So it's kind of felt like we were driving a car with a flat tire without you.
Thank you.
So one of the things for today, I'm going to open it up and see what you all want to talk about, but I do want to give the floor at some point, either earlier or later, to Sarah Hardy. Sarah is the most amazing woman, and she is such an incredible advocate, and I'll let her tell you all what she did, but I'll just put it under the category of what Sarah Hardy did this week can be a model for advocacy for parenting education anywhere, not just in Minnesota. So Sarah, would you like to share?
Sure. Thanks, Susan. That's really high praise coming from you, certainly. So as I've shared in this group, I worked for Edina Public Schools for 4 years as a parent ed, actually student taught there also. And over the course of my time there, we had this new coordinator actually right when I signed on to in 2016. And let's see, the ECFE program before our very eyes shrank. And at the same time, some of the adult ed for parents and caregivers that was going on that is not ECFE, but is also parent support, but it doesn't have the ECFE component, so kids don't come. But and that's because it's for parents of kids who are older. Grew, and that was great fun, and I was a part of that. And then the catalog came out for 1920. No, I'm sorry, the planned catalog came out for, these changes were very small until the catalog for 1920 came out. I'm sorry, 2021 came out, the pre-COVID planned catalog. And there were some significant reductions across the board to ECFE classes, which was deeply concerning to me. But our what we called our Beyonds program was planning to continue as was. And so anyway, you know how it's busy, and so you're busy, you're in the work of it, and you don't have time to like stop and write a letter or like raise a flag. I did raise a flag with a school board member I know personally when the 1920 catalog came out, because I was like, this feels like no one is noticing and I'm concerned. didn't get any traction. Then we were also in the middle of a grievance with our administration around our contract. So working on a proposed MOU language, like there was a lot that wasn't great, that wasn't like feeling, there were a lot of ways in which it felt like parent ed was an afterthought. And that parent educators were not appreciated or understood and appreciated. But choose the order that you want to. Anyway, so then COVID, of course, so everyone's just in crisis mode. And then fast forward to the summer, and sure enough, in August, it became clear that all of the kinds of reimagining that was going on and reported in by people in this group that I was joining every week over the summer was not happening at my school. And I advocated for that privately with my coordinator, and she declined the offers that I made to help reimagine, even as a volunteer, ECFE programming, and talk about changing our catalog so that it was COVID conscious, even because the catalog that was still enrolling was the catalog that we had conceived in November of 2019, right? And was still out in the world, like supposedly enrolling. But by April of 2020, everybody knew we weren't going to be able to deliver that catalog. If you just looked at it, you could tell, like everybody, right? And so I was pressing. And then in August, the rubber hit the road, and we were all 5 parent educators at Edina were laid off. We had a meeting in early August where it became clear that our coordinator was not going to be doing any parent education to start off the school year, ECFE or parent education for parents of older kids. And in that meeting, it became clear that there were not going to be jobs for any of us or several of our early childhood educator colleagues, because she wasn't planning to do any programming. And so that was a shocking meeting for that reason, but it was also shocking because of the abdication of responsibility to the community to step up at a time when the need arguably has never been greater to support parents and families. So as a result of that meeting, one and a half of my colleagues was re-enlisted. So the 5 of us were laid off. One colleague they retained who had a parent ed licensure was not laid off. So she plus one of my 5 laid off colleagues who came back at halftime was reinstated. So they remained and developed what I have called a WISPE catalog of classes for parents that didn't even start until October after MEA. So the school year started with no parent ed for families in Edina. And then as a result of our strenuous objection in early August in the meeting in which it became clear that none of us were going to have jobs, but at which there was also no programming, we kind of pried open that box and advocated at least for something for families, which they didn't start until October and has kind of bumped along this year. So they've had a small number of ECFE type classes, and one adult ed for parents and caregivers class happened this year. So then, I'm caring for myself. So I'm not really reckoning with that or putting together all the pieces because I'm overwhelmed by it and sad and trying to press on with my own projects. But then the catalog for 21-22 came out recently. And it's really, really slender for ECFE. It's really, really slender. So unfortunately, maybe for them, I have some time on my hands. So I pulled together a letter. It was time. So I looked at all the data from 2013-14 to present of classes offered is how I decided to count it. Now, understanding that some classes don't enroll and things move around and whatnot, but that was the researched data I could find that was consistent across all the years, and those catalogs were available. So I did all of the tally of that plus the adult ed for parents, right? Plus the Beyonds program, which was the non-ECFE component, but also parent education. And I just wrote a letter, and I wrote a letter that went through 4 versions before it was ready to send. And it took advantage of a lot of smart people's interest and readiness to read it and give me some feedback. And finally pulled the trigger. I hate that analogy, on Monday of this past week and sent it. And so you know how that is. You like press send and you're like, oh God, what did I do? But I did, because I can't let it go unspoken. And also I talked to one retired school board member who was like, Sarah, I don't think they realize that this is happening because your early learning center also runs other programming. So parents and kids are still coming in and out of that building. So a casual observer wouldn't know. So that was the key piece of feedback. So I added that in the cover page, the cover letter as well. Like, a casual observer might not realize because ECFE is still going on and early childhood screenings are still going on. And there's still a preschool, which started first day of school on schedule, also managed by my coordinator. So I just laid it out for them, and I have heard crickets from anybody who I officially sent the letter to, anybody who I didn't blind copy. Now, the people I blind copied, I've heard a lot from, all the allies, right? But nothing. Now, I do know that it's circulating across some other activist parents. I've been asked for permission to share, and I've given that permission. So, I don't know, it's kind of like the silence is kind of deafening, but at least I pulled together the story, and I will tell you that others who were laid off, former colleagues and colleagues who are early childhood teachers who are now there working as on a part-time hourly basis, who used to be contracted teachers last year, so the same work for much less pay and no benefits, are all have all expressed to me, many of them, how great it feels just to have it all written out. It's like so validating, because we were all put through the ringer, and I'm in a position where I don't have anything to lose by taking on a label of, if I'm labeled as a firebrand or a troublemaker, I don't really care. I really don't. So that's what I did. And Susan was one of my readers. Thank you, Susan. And gave me such hugely strong affirmations. I was so gratified, because it's vulnerable. Even if it's the truth, even if I'm passionate about it, it's vulnerable to be like, okay, time out. This is not okay. And then to write out the letter. So anyway, that's what I did.
So one thing I'll follow up with, and there's the content, but there's also the delivery, right? And one of the things that I really marveled at, Sarah did, was kind of a 1-2 punch. And so there's the idea of grabbing their attention, because if we do this like with cover letters and things like that, where if we hit people with so much detail and stuff like that, their eyes gloss over, and nobody's got the time in that, right? But if we can grab their attention, and let them know this is why I'm writing, and this is, then it's just like, and then they'll look at it, or they'll turn it over to their aides to get the content, right? And that's exactly what Sarah did. And so her cover letter, it was brief, it was short, it was to the point, and she included a visual, which I think is always good too, to get people's. And so this visual happened to be a small table that showed the decrease in enrollment or the decrease in offerings, like through the years. Anyway, so I also want to highlight Sarah's artistry in the delivery of this, and that I would not be surprised if it did grab people's attention and help to circulate it even more widely.
Thanks, Susan. Yeah, so there are a couple of questions I can answer. I sent the letter to the superintendent of schools and copied the director of community ed, my union rep, who is involved in a mediation on our behalf at present as well, separate from the letter. The school, yes, there is a school board member designated for early childhood and the early learning center. So her by name, and then the whole school board additionally to their general email address. And I think, and the current president of the PTO at the Early Learning Center. So that was another table that I pulled together, was PTO membership and fundraising for the same years. this took a little time, this letter. And wait, to sweep to the bottom line, the current membership average has averaged 30 parents. And every other year they have a fundraiser that yields somewhere between $50,000 and $60,000. And this year, by which I mean 2021, is a fundraiser year. There was no fundraiser and they have 4 members. So I linked that back to, like, you know, if you don't give to parents, they're like, if they're not invested, they're not invested. They're not going to, there are plenty of places for parents to give their time and energy and dollars to in Edina, right? So, let's see, Shawshank Redemption. So a friend of mine's, because it said, told me she thought it was my Aaron Brockovich moment. So that's who I sent the letter to. What role is my advisory council playing? I have no idea. And I don't think we have a parent advisory council of any. We had the PTO, like I just said, and there were 4 members this year. Will I share my letter with you? Absolutely. I'd be happy to. Maybe Susan, I can send it to you and you can send it to the list. Is that, I don't know how we do that. How should I do that?
I have it. I mean, from when you,
I blind copied Susan and like
yeah.
the rest of my pack. So if you want to forward that, the, am I correct that with COVID funding changes, a lot of districts use funding? Okay. So Lorraine, so what I've learned about that is that funding that was designated for a certain expense, such as ECFE, that is extra, that is unassigned, may be reassigned rather than roll over. This is the flexibility that COVID provided districts. So if you have extra funds that are unassigned, you can redesignate that funding to other places with school board approval, and it has to be accounted for in a way that is like audit robust, right? So it has to be trackable and traceable. The question remains for me. I went back through the school board notes briefly, and when I talked to this retired school board member, like, there was a vote in October to reassign some funds, but it wasn't ECFE dollars. It was the funding, the way that early learning is funded is confusing to me, and I'm not an expert on it, but it was a different line item of dollars that was reallocated, but it was only like $100,000. So it didn't seem to add up to me. It still doesn't add up to me because they, of course, are still taking the same funding. They did in July, the same funding based on population, which is growing, which I also put in the letter. And their program is smaller than ever. So it would be interesting. I'm curious about how much running a program costs and how you pay for it. And the other point I made in the letter, which I think is one I kind of meandered into, but which is huge, I think, which is that enrollment does not equal need. If you have classes that are not enrolling, you are honor bound and ethically bound, and I think statute bound to figure out why not and to go to the need, figure out where the need is, that people aren't saying yes to the classes that you're offering. It doesn't mean, oh, people don't need this. So, yeah, so I think that's, that's the long and short of it. The other point I made is that, parents are still seeking education, and my business is Exhibit A. Like, I've had a brisk little business here of online parent ed, but there are other examples of like private parent groups that are going on. But the equity issues with those are tremendous. Many of those are private circles that then hire in a parent ed to do like just their little closed circle of parents. And also the power of going to a public school building, like just the civic involvement around that, like just the equalizer that is for everybody to go into a building that, yeah, maybe it was built in 1950, maybe the radiator kind of sucks, like, but we're all in this together kind of thing, to me is hugely meaningful, and just an opportunity that the school district has just seeded to be the center hub of that for parents, and the goodwill that they build up and are now leveraging in a time when they're asking parents to cooperate and have patience and do more like than ever. They're just banking on so much goodwill of parents, and this is a proven demonstrable way of like refilling those reserves, and they just didn't do it. So that's what I got.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. So I hope since you are able to join us most weeks, keep us up to date, and also remember the listserv. So, if anything happens along the way, and I'll share the letter out that way. Like I said, it's a model. Sarah did put tremendous effort, and I think that. So last week, Greta, you went to the Menafee advocacy training right after this. Was anybody else there? So Sarah, you were there too. So I would love to hear more about that, because that sort of segues from what Sarah did to the advocacy piece. Because I think as I look at all of the work that Sarah put into that, and for those of you who were been in ECFE long enough, you remember it back in the 2012, 2013, we had the ECFE evaluation, that was really intended as an easier way to gather data from programs that then could be pooled together for advocacy. And so the idea with that is that there's a template, right? So that it makes it easier when we're all crazy busy doing things. It's just like, oh, okay, I can do this, 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 and this. And I think Sarah's is somebody's got to be the first, right, to crank out those numbers and find, but once it's there, it's kind of a nice template for, oh, I can get those numbers from my district and plug it in like that. So, so what happened at the Menafee thing? The Menafee training on advocacy and all of that? For those,
I'll let somebody else talk.
Well, who else went? Who else went? It wasn't just Sarah and I, was it? Okay, Jen and Lorraine. Okay, which one of you guys share? I thought it was good. It was nice to hear from a legislator. It was good to hear that really right now emails are a perfect way. Just sending an email to your local your personal representative, and then maybe out to those that are on the education committee. I'm trying to remember, Susan. It's been a long week. What else is that? I'm sure Jen and Lorraine, you have some other pieces too. It was really well done, but yeah.
I'll jump in. I wasn't there, but Cheryl Joachim, the legislator that was there, so she's my sister-in-law. Oh. And she comes directly from the Hopkins ECFE program. My mother had her as a parent in her parent education program. She's a huge advocate for ECFE, and she's a great person to have on our side in terms of having an ear. So, and she really does know kind of what's going on. And so I was super excited to see that she was there.
She was really great, and she did mention you, Shannon.
Was there anybody there from Education Minnesota at the training?
No.
That's interesting. I'm surprised by that.
Why are you? Yeah, tell me why.
Well, because the rep, the union, our local union, like Southern Minnesota lead, Education Minnesota rep was vital to getting Northfield on the contract. His name's Aaron Van Morlehem. I don't know if anybody else has access to him, but Education Minnesota is really great. They gave me a big old packet, and it said, here's who's on the contract, here's who's not. He basically called Northfield out saying, Northfield, you're lagging behind. Everybody around you is on the contract, get with the program. So, but that really surprises me. So find out who your field rep is for Education Minnesota. They are fabulous advocates, because there was a time when I was told I could not be a member of the union if I can't remember what it was. You can absolutely be a member of your local union, even if you're not on the contract. And I had gotten some verbiage that I couldn't, and the union was like, no, you can, because I felt like I needed to be a member of the union in order to help push the idea of getting ECFE on the contract. So yeah, find out who your rep is and use them and say, hey, hi, need help. What can you do? What can you do for me? They're wonderful.
Ellen, can I clarify, is that for being on the K-12 contract? Is that what you're speaking of, and not under a different one? So under the
So
community or the K-12 umbrella?
yes. So I am not on I'm still on the umbrella of community ed, but I am paid according to the K-12 step and lane. Yeah. So I'm still on I'm still on an addendum to the contract. I'm still hourly, but I think I got a $6 or $7 an hour raise, you guys. It was amazing. So yeah, so it doesn't have to get you on the contract, but they help you get paid according to what you are worth, which is a lot.
I'll second the support of Education Minnesota. They've been really instrumental in supporting our grievance with the district. As I said, all of us who are contracted teachers, E12 or K12, however you want to call it, contracted teachers, found out kind of by deduction in early August that there weren't going to be jobs for us at the start of the school year, when the process laid out in the contract is for them to let us know that we would be being put on unrequested leave much earlier, which is really only decent in my opinion. However, that didn't happen. And so there's a grievance on that. And Tom Connell, our local Education Minnesota Edina rep, has together with the statewide team really gone to bat for us significantly. So I would second that.
And I would third that. I think because I have been a union rep for our building and have been involved with the union over the years, I didn't find the advocacy training particularly helpful. I was happy to hear the representative and know of her support. But as far as like boots on the ground, this is what you should do, I felt like my union has been much more giving us specifics. I guess I had kind of hoped that there would be like, okay, this is who we want to target. These are bills that are upcoming. These are issues. This is what you want to do. And it was much more like, if you ever want to advocate, maybe send an email. And again, that's my perspective, but I wanted a little more like, okay, folks, here we go. This is what we can do. And there you go. That's mine.
Sorry, that was.
Go ahead.
Clarifying, that was Lorraine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because my screen, like Lorraine, you weren't moving, and so I'm like around to see. So it's almost like you were a ventriloquist. So okay, thanks. That was Lorraine. In case anybody wants to know.
So now that you know that I have written this letter, and it is 7 or 8 pages, single spaced. One of the things that I found challenging by the advocacy meeting was the representative, who is wonderful, Shannon, and really was glad that she could be there and appreciated her advocacy and her support, and do her advice that it be very brief. Whatever we send or provide, be very brief with room for them to make notes on. And I'm like, well, that's not my letter. Like, my letter is like 26 pages, single spaced, because that's the story I felt like I had to tell. So that left me feeling a little stuck. Like, I can't send my letter to her. Like, that made me feel like my letter has no place. It wouldn't be an effective advocacy tool if I sent it to a representative. I may still send it to my reps. I did think about that. I had Heather Edelson in one of my classes last year. And so a Beyond ECFE class, but I haven't done that yet. And I have been thinking about doing it. And that comment was the thing that gave me pause. I thought maybe I should hold back and see what happens at the local level first.
Sarah, you could still double space it and create more white space, but just have it like 12 pages.
Oh, God.
And then there's still white spaces in there for them to
Right,
write
right,
on where they want to make up.
right.
Sarah, is this a money issue at all? You know,
Well, I think, I mean, of course, it's all about money, right, Lori? I mean, I think my coordinator would say that the programs shrank because there wasn't enrollment, at least in part. But again, I have said what I'll say about that. Like, I don't equate enrollment to need. And I also think that there is some smoke and mirrors going on, frankly, between like where the funding is going. So in the August meeting that I mentioned, and this is in my letter, we were advocating when the meeting opened and it became clear that there was going to be no parent education to start the year. We began to press against that and advocate for ECFE and our families. And my coordinator's response was, well, we can't afford it. And I'm like, wait a minute. Yes, you can. Like, you're taking money from the state. You took it last month.
you know,
And
outstate, we look at Edina and we think, wow, they must have great funds. That's what we would think.
I know, Lori, I know.
You know,
Yeah.
one thing that was really helpful for Mankato, because well, actually our union president had a history of the last few years of really going to bat for ECFE, and we were trying to get on the contract. So she, right away, you know, I became a faculty rep in the union, but then she put me on the executive rep at the table, where every school, once a month, not every school, but 5 or 6 reps from different schools in our district sit down with the higher ups, our superintendent, and different, and we talk about issues that are going around our district. And I thought that I was even, you know, at that table, my presence at that table felt really powerful. Now I'm 2 years from retirement, so I'm going to be getting out here, but I just feel like you haven't had anybody fighting for you. I mean, I just feel like, and that's so hard for me to understand, because I feel like, you know, we've been really pretty supported by our union and our administration, and I feel bad for, you know, about this. I just, that you're even having to go through this and fight for a district that probably has the funding. I don't know. And you know, we're not contract in Mankato, but like Ellen, they gave us a similar pay and we got vacation days, and they're trying to get us up there. But I just feel bad hearing this story. It's
Thanks.
worrisome.
I hate to say it, but I mean, follow the money. Somewhere, someone at the top is saying, what's this program? Why is it taking so much? Why are we're paying a parent, an early childhood, a parent educator, you know, $35, $40 an hour. Ooh. And with lots of experience. I truly think that's what happened in Faribault. There was one full-time parent educator left, and they told her that she was teaching 13 or 14 classes with a 0.75, and they wanted her to start working summers and work 2 nights a week. I mean, they made it absolutely impossible for her. But she'd been there for 25 years. She had her master's. She was expensive. She was incredible. And and at the table, they presented this to her, and she was like, congratulations, you've done exactly what you've been trying to do for 5 years, and I'm done. They pushed her out. And now they don't have parent education anymore. They just have a parent educator that stands in the corner for consultation. But it was from the top. It was always about the money for them, always. And that is why there is no longer a barely a viable program anymore. Somebody at the top doesn't care about the people, but they care a lot about the dimes and nickels. That's just my opinion, having lived through this myself.
And I noticed too that, and I don't know, like, there's a lot more funding streams for preschool that I've heard. And then I listened to other early childhood educators and parent educators around where I am, and they talk about that their coordinators, like, they feel like coordinators have shifted the importance of preschool. Like, preschool is they're like, but they're so concerned about preschool that ECFE is getting little by little shoved to the side. And I've heard it from lots of people, colleagues. And it just, hearing you guys talk about it now, it feels like that's just kind of, they're just.
I actually work in my role is in both worlds of preschool and in ECFE. I'm a lead teacher for both. And on multiple occasions, I have had to be very strong in my voice to say, I'm not going to stop offering some ECFE classes to be able to give more time to the preschool side. But it has been suggested on many, many, many occasions that, maybe if you taught less parent ed classes, you'd have more time for this. Maybe you shouldn't be the one that teaches in any of those morning classes, because we really could use you here. And I'm like, but we don't have another teacher for that. Well, I don't think we have to offer that class. Yes, we do. So I have definitely had to be my own advocate in that for sure, and fight for the fact that this is just as important work that I'm doing here as you need me doing over here. So I don't see that fight changing anytime soon.
Sarah, did they keep all the preschools?
Yeah. So my coordinator, when she signed on in 2016, she came from an early learning center that did not have ECFE. And I was not a part of that, but she was the person we were given to work with. And so she came in with no understanding or appreciation of ECFE. And so from the beginning, we saw it as our role to educate her, because I was probationary and two of my colleagues also were. She was seeing a lot of us. She was seeing a lot of us at work, with families engaged. So we felt really like we were doing a good job in our modeling and our example and in the good work that we were doing. And she was actually seeing, at the same time, she was overwhelmed by like tearfully overwhelmed by the commitment of the parents on the PTO when she came into our school, by their passion, by their support financially, and just in body, the community stuff that they were doing in terms of just fun events for families and that sort of thing, just the kinds of programming that they were doing. And so I think for the first 2 years, we felt like we were making terrific headway in pitching ECFE and the value of it to her. At the same time, she introduced and has continued to grow an all-day pre-K program, which she felt sure there was interest in, and it has enrolled. And that's been a big feather in her cap, I think, for our district. And it turns out that, we didn't successfully win her over, it seems, in terms of her actually valuing the work that we did, or the commitment that the parents come with when they sign on and do ECFE. So I think it shouldn't matter. She is also not a parent herself. It should not matter. But it's hard to feel like it doesn't when this is such hard work, and that's not a fair criticism of her. She has a huge heart. I've seen her, really soften and really passionate about things. But this is just not something that it seems to be in her top three. And therefore, because we were often forced to advocate for ourselves for even things like furniture, space. There was a reconstruction, a remodeling of our school at one point, and we had to, it was really uncomfortable. We had to like ask where our tables went. Like there was it felt like there was no consideration given to parent ed when the building got put back together. For example, we did have one classroom that had the see-through glass between the adult ed space and the early childhood space, right? Like the classic ECFE setup. But she assigned that early childhood space to a preschool class. So a coordinator with ECFE on the top of their mind would never do that. That's the only space in the building that affords parents a chance to look through the glass one way, right? But so that was like in 2018 or something. So, it was just, I don't even remember the question. Sorry. It was
It
that
sounds like she isn't real familiar with the importance of the first 3 years.
I don't know. We thought we were doing great. We were put on the teacher's contract in 2018.
And she helped with that?
Yes, strongly advocated for it. But also she was the one, I understand, who did the math to say that we could afford it. And I don't think that was quite right. It seems that I don't know what happened there, but it was her word that was taken, I think, to support the conversion of us all. And it turns out I don't think the math was solid on that. And because obviously now with they've gone nuclear in the program because of money, I think they would say. So yeah.
One thing that I have done in the fact that I am in both worlds a lot is I find a lot of ways to put parent education on the back of preschool and trying to offer things through that avenue to even just get the word out more that way. And the suggestion that we do have some ECFE funds that are available. So yes, we can't afford to have busing and whatever, but if we did it as an ECFE class, we could do it during the summer, and then I could add parent education into that. And we could, oh, well, you know what, maybe we could offer preschool if we did it in the summer. So I definitely feel myself jumping on the back of preschool more often now to try, and where I think originally when I started in my position, I think just as a teacher, I think it was more the opposite. It was more like we had ECFE. Oh, maybe we could squeeze some preschool like classes into the ECFE world. And that's just been a complete flip now. But I'll ride on that back wherever wherever we can get more parent education in. Just keep in there.
And it's my opinion that a coordinator who is committed to ECFE thinks strategically just like that. Like, how do I keep this all working, right? How do I leverage the strengths over here to make it better over here and vice versa? And it's clear to me that that's not the coordinator we had.
So as a coordinator of ECFE, who has been in a lot of districts, rural, and now Duluth is like the most urban district that I've been in. Like, I know what that's like to use the union reps, our local union admin people to say like, our people need to get on contract. And then the reality of it is it's expensive. It's expensive to do that. And so, yeah, there's consequences. And if she didn't do her math, or if she didn't get any sort of commitment from Fund One to help pay for that, I'm not saying what happened was right in any way whatsoever. I am just sad and heartbroken to hear that. But I mean, that's generally the ask. When we at Menafee are talking about what's our ask is to make sure we're funded appropriately so we can pay our teachers well. And then, and it's very difficult in a year where we know we're going to have a budget deficit to say we have a big ask, because then they look at us and they go, oh gosh, your program is super expensive. Wow, because it is. So it's difficult. However, being a part of Menafee is kind of our one shot. Like, we have to really be active, get on that Menafee board and help us get on the advocacy committee and help us, because we need help. And we need, like, we weren't able to do the conference last spring, and that's a huge hit to our budget, huge hit to our budget. So membership is really important right now. So that's my plug for Menafee. Like, make sure you're a member and get your districts on board, because we need your voices and we need your stories. Also parent stories. Like, get your parents and their stories right in the faces of your school board members and your legislators, because the stories that they tell are so impactful, so rich. Like, we have parents who have said, ECFE has saved my life. Literally, I was on the edge and this group brought me back. So these stories are important. And so it's so multifaceted, and you're right, the funding coordinators who are doing both ECFE and school readiness preschool, they're trying to figure out, how does VPK work and how does school readiness plus work, and how do we layer families and kids, it is the ultimate time suck. It is terrible. But while they try to fix all of that, if they ever try to fix all of that, then they'll also look at ECFE, which makes us nervous too, because we're expensive. So it's just so multi, and, and legislators, yeah, they literally are telling us they have like 30 minutes to visit with us. So telling your story, or maybe Sarah reaching out to your local people and just, can we set up a meeting? Because then you can have 30 minutes to talk about it. Maybe that would be more impactful than sending your long letter. I don't know.
Yep.
So that's my
Thanks,
my
Jen.
2 cents of it all. But it's yeah. Make sure you get your parents to tell their stories, because those are the important ones.
I was just going to say, Jen, you remind me of the reality that we're not K-12 and we don't have specific dollars following those children into our program. And so those teachers don't have to do advocacy. I mean, it's really good if they can, promote their K-12 programming, of course, but we are in a different boat. We have to realize that funding is very different, and the stories you have your parents write, putting them together, bringing them to the school board when it's, an appropriate time to do that. And all those pieces are hard. I had a question kind of along this line. I find it difficult. So there's 3 of us on staff that are teachers in ECFE, and I've got like 7 to 12 preschool teachers. So when I talk about advocacy for ECFE, we need to get on the contract. They're over here going, well, we're not either. And that's our program here. That's in our district. They're not on the teacher contract. In fact, there's nothing saying they need to be a teacher. They don't even have to be a licensed teacher to be in those positions. So we've done a okay job in Cambridge. My director, before she was the director, she was on the school, she was on the union board. She did negotiation teams. She was always putting herself out there so that they knew about early childhood. So we are, like Ellen shared, we're kind of paid about the same, not on the same tool, right? But only 2 lanes and only 7 only 2 lanes and only 7 years. So we top out really fast. Anyway, that wasn't what I was trying to say. What I was trying to get to say is that she had to do a lot of work, and it's hard work, and not all of us are like, I don't feel like I'm designed for it. I much rather sit in a parent ed discussion and, do that. I don't feel designed for that work. So Sarah, kudos for doing work that we're probably not really super designed for. And then also just kind of a accountability that we have to show up, and because no one's doing it for us. And it's not always easy, but it's really, really, really important. ECFE is a different animal than K-12, and it always has been, and it's different than preschool. But my question was, has anyone found a generous way to talk about this in your early childhood circles without offending preschool teachers? I mean, I feel like that's where we're at. And maybe Melissa, I don't know, maybe you have experiences that you could share, but it's tricky. And anyway.
I guess I'd appeal again to union support. Our preschool teachers are all on a regular teacher contract. They have their own seniority list, but we have had incredible union support for early childhood. And like I mean, I was on a regular teacher contract in 1989. And it's like, this is Wilmer, Minnesota. We are not progressive, but somehow they were with contracts.
I think leadership.
Yeah.
huge.
And if any of you have been around a while, Kathy Haug was involved in early days of ECFE. And I think she brought that when she was a principal in the district. And so it's like, how do we, just keep thinking like, how do we duplicate? Because we've continued in Wilmer to have leadership that has supported that. But I feel like it's just tenuous. Like at any moment, our current person has been here a long time. I feel like if she leaves, we could be Edina, like all of us. And it just, that's not something that K-12 has to ever think about. And I found that COVID and hearing Edina's challenges was the first that I thought, wow, we are not secure. That was it. And it's just disheartening because it shouldn't, like, you know, we tell parents how their job is the most important and we're supporting them. How do people not get it after 40 years?
And I think the part that's really crazy about that too is that when I talk to people from a different state, like I grew up in Wyoming and I got my child development degree in Wyoming. And when I talk to people about parent education, they're like, that's amazing. Oh my gosh, I wish we had something like that. Like all the other states wish they had this, and we're fighting to just barely keep it alive here. And that might be part of the issue, is that nationally, the Minnesotan responses can be, well, nobody else does this, so we don't really need it because nobody else does this, you know, where everyone else is like, oh my gosh, that's great, you do that, I wish I had it too. But I also kind of wanted to speak to Greta saying about the fight between. I have a really unique situation. I think we just don't like change in education very much. Big giant period on that, and how much they hate all the change with COVID this year, like side point. But change is difficult. So we had a really unique situation where my previous coordinator was a parent educator, and she started all the preschool and everything as well. And we actually started under the envelope that ECFE was the driving force. So our ECFE teachers, all licensed, all on the separate umbrellaed contract, but on contract. And our preschool teachers are not. So our preschool teachers are not licensed. They don't have that same scenario. And so there is a little bit of the fact that when we have ECFE classes and we're offering all of them to teach those classes, but then the ones who are not licensed can't. So there's definitely a licensed, unlicensed imbalance and jealousy that starts to fit into that for sure. But now with the new tiered licensure, if any of those unlicensed teachers start fighting to want to teach an ECFE class, because right now in my district, finding a teacher, because we offer so little ECFE hours, if it's not a stay-at-home mom who wants to get a couple of hours, I'm not getting anyone for ECFE classes. So our teachers like work Monday through Thursday. So my intention is to have our ECFE classes mostly on Fridays in the morning, still fit that time frame, and have some of our threes teachers offered to teach those classes. The big giant bonus to them that they're not getting is that for them to teach the ECFE class, they have to become licensed. So we have to do that that thing to get them licensed. And once they're a licensed teacher, they automatically go on to contract for all hours. So all of their preschool time that they were paid at a lower rate will actually give them a raise for all of their hours just to take on one ECFE class on those Fridays. and it's still hard to convince them to do it. So I kind of feel like when there's the complaint about not being licensed, I'm like, but you could be. You could be. You're kind of choosing to fight against that as well. So
This surprises me because in Mankato, they won't hire an unlicensed preschool teacher.
So that's something that has kind of always been established for VPK, you have to be fully licensed. So our VPK ones in our 4-year-old are all fully licensed and on the regular teacher contract. But our 3-year-old school readiness ones, it's up to our discretion. So we have one who is licensed and the other 3 are not. They all are like one didn't do her student teaching, one did, it's like those little, never got the switch over. She had a license in a different state, but never switched it to our state. Like those little teeny tiny things that kept them from getting it, but not officially licensed. So they don't get.
That's how the union really went to bat for us, is they said you require the same thing.
Yeah.
They have your same degrees, and also, we have a parent who has their master's.
Yeah.
And
We don't get any difference in that. If it's a master's or a regular under our community ed license, it doesn't matter if you have a master's or you're just licensed, and that's the only thing that matters for us.
Okay. I mean, we're not contract, but master's gets paid more. I have 25 years in, so they up my salary for that. And we got 5 vacation days. We got a couple snow days. They gave us, but they still haven't put us under the contract. But
No.
all the teachers in the district, when they hear them say, well, the requirements are the same for them, and you're working side by side with them with special ed. I mean, why would the pay be different?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of been our, the big argument.
Well,
Go ahead.
an argument going through our district, like PLC, CT time, like that group. We've always thought, well, I shouldn't say we've always, as soon as I became a teacher, I was like, I know I'm not licensed, but that sounds like a great meeting and I want to be a part of it. So they started letting me join in on those meetings. And ever since I did that, that person has to follow through to be a part of that meeting, get that extra 45 minutes a week. You have to do all of the work that goes along with it, but you don't get the bonus payout at the end of the year because you're not licensed. But we're making them do all that work. And this year particularly, I have not my direct coordinator, but my admin above, who is fighting to say that they don't need any admin observations. They don't need any of that stuff because they're not licensed. And I'm like, look, we're making them do all of the work that everyone else is expected to do. They should get all the benefits of that besides the financial payout at the end. Like, that's one of the benefits, is that they get to see you and you come in. And why does it make sense that if they're a licensed teacher and had all that extra education, that we're going to give them an observation, but the person who doesn't have that, we're not going to show up for them? Like that's backwards. So I think there's a lot of just fighting for what's right, that it's the work we all have to do all the time.
I feel hotter now than I did at the start with my Icelandic sweater. Maybe I'm sitting by heat. Yeah, this is a great conversation. I start with Sarah, and I would just hate, Sarah, for you to leave daunted by sort of the things from the workshop, that you have to put things in short things. I mean, that's the standard. I mean, we've known that, forever. And it's like, I always tell students, it's just like, you've got Obama in the elevator for 8 floors. How are you going to summarize the value of your work, right? Yeah, we always want to do it, but the main thing is getting attention. And according to some tech guru last week we're all in an attention economy. And so grabbing attention, but as we've certainly seen, I'm a data person, and that's what we did attempt to do, was to, I mean, honestly, with the early childhood world, and Jennifer knows this, I mean, with the evidence-based practice world, we can't hold a candle to what they're able to demonstrate in terms of impacts with kids, and tie that with quality education. And, you know, there are all kinds of turf battles with early ed. But that is partly what we tried to do back in 2012, 2013, which was to have, you know, a rigorous, you know, assessment tool that we could use in ECFE, and we could connect it to parenting outcomes. We could tie it to children's outcomes. We saw differences based on families' income and diverse families, and that those families and families who attended ECFE longer. And we made the case, and unfortunately, the momentum kind of wasn't picked up, and it was treated more like a short-term project rather than an ongoing piece of advocacy. And I share that graphic of the fish because it's in my heart as a socialist. I mean, it's still what I believe, is that you do gather people, right? And so I say all of the efforts are worthwhile, right? And I do, because data does talk. That said, I've also talked to legislators who will show a pie chart and they'll say, see this little narrow slice in here? Like, this is research. Like, this is how much research really matters to our decision making. But it's still there, right? And it still is really valuable. And so, as I think what you've all seen in your own practice through the years, is that value to people who make the decisions about ECFE can come from many places. And when I used to work with in cooperative extension and the 4-H program, you know, oftentimes would be also kind of under the knife, and there'd be like, why are we doing, like, kids are raising cattle and, you know, stuff like that. Isn't, like, we're not an agrarian society anymore. But there was so much love and so much devotion from former 4-Hers. And I'll say, as an outsider to Minnesota, one of the things that I continue to hear is this legacy of ECFE and what it matters to parents and to families. And my students in my undergrad classes, I mean, a third of them were ECFE children, right? And they still hold this warm love in their heart. And so I, in my heart of hearts, do believe that a lot of advocacy is around parent voices and parents telling their story. I think, but Jennifer's question about, but how do you get them to the right ears? Because it's easy, and I would say easy, but I mean, in our classes, you know, we can do it. I know Monica Potter, when she was in Robbinsdale, she had these really nice marketing PR videos that went out. She got local media attention. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that should be, I honestly think more should be done to have more of a presence, a collective presence about the power. But again, you know, I'm out there, like, I still get disgusted that parenting ed anyway isn't attended to in a greater, you know, like, it's all about, but really, what difference does it make for kids? What really makes a difference for kids is that their parents are employed and their parents are finishing, and these kind of more structural things. And it's just like, yeah, but also parenting is like super hard. And what about all those kids that aren't doing as well, that maybe if their parents were better, you know, but again, that's what you guys do. So I just say, it's like, it is a multi-pronged approach. But I would just continue to advocate that we gather together as little fish and continue to have these conversations, which is why I'm so thrilled that Sarah was willing to do this really hard work, but also to share it. I believe that, Sarah, in your, you know, again, your BCCing and getting your network going, you know, is to follow that capital, follow what those folks are saying and who they're connecting with, and that power of the social network. You know, and we always leave these meetings with like a new idea and a new thing that we can do. But just like talking about diversity and inclusion together, you know, if this group can also continue to light the light of advocacy and momentum and sharing our stories individually within programs, but then, you know, how did you do that? What pieces did you use? What marketing things did you use? You know, and then hold each other accountable, right? And not just make this I'm sorry, I'm like getting off, aren't I? But I mean, rather than it being like a weekly topic, but come back, and maybe just gently ask, like, what advocacy could you do this week, or the stories, like what stories of greatness did you see this week in terms of, people spreading the word on ECFE. But I do think that as a collective group of little fish going after the big fish, is that accountability to kind of how we're swimming, and that we're supporting each other to kind of keep swimming is what it's about. So sorry. So just throwing that in. Well, we're at 1:05. And I know that we've kind of spent the whole time on all of this. Are there any other ways that the group can meet your needs this week, or questions we can?
Can I just quick thank you? I wanted to say a quick thank you. That 2 weeks ago, I missed last week, but the week before we had a big conversation about diversity and all of that. And I did end up having my class, and I dug into a lot of the stuff, the great stuff that you guys shared. And I dug into some Brene Brown, some great podcasts with her. And you guys just really encouraged me to dig into it a little deeper, into this really scary conversation, because it is just so emotional around it. And you guys really encouraged me to do it. And I think it really helped my lesson plan. It really increased the value in that. So I just wanted to say a great thank you to you guys for that.
Thanks, Melissa.
Yeah.
And I will shout out again to Yuji and to Greta, who have pulled together our resources. And I've heard back from several people that they really appreciate that resource drive, and being able to come back after our meetings to see what we've shared. So thank you again for getting that ball rolling.
This gave me a random advocacy thought about the fact, like, we're sharing all of these great resources with ourselves. We're talking about making this like bigger and going, like, maybe it's reaching out to a couple of people in other states, even in that world. If we start getting more people involved in what we do here, and they want to mimic what we have, maybe the value of what we have starts to go up a little bit too. I don't know who those people are or how to find them. It was just a random thought as you were talking about sharing these resources, that some people could dig in who are interested a little bit more into understanding what we do by seeing the different shares and stuff that we do. I don't know, just random thought.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and Yuji is with us, and she's in Montana.
Thank you. I want to share our gratitude to Jennifer here. She's connecting me with the senator in Montana. She's an advocate for early childhood education. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the opportunity to discuss with this senator about this topic. Funding and, family education for families, for early childhood. To be honest, I'm so surprised in the United States. I mean, people are, not aware, do not have enough awareness about the importance of early childhood education. But in China, we know we have early childhood education 3,000 years ago. The first king of Zhou dynasty, that was longest, that family ruled the country for over about 800 years. So the first king, so when his mother pregnant with him, right? So this mother moved to a big garden and stayed with only 2 maids, and she strictly followed early childhood education rules in order to, make sure the child is healthy. And, and then after the child was born, she and her mother-in-law, they cooperated to educate this child. And this child, this son grew into a great king with all the wisdom and the intelligence and the compassion for people. And, this family ruled China for over 800 years. So in China, we have sayings that, at year three years old, you can tell the child's adulthood. And at 7 years old, you will be able to tell the whole life of this child. That means how important early childhood education is. I just like, I mean, gosh, how, we in the United States, we are so developed and we have so much research and information shows the importance of early childhood education. However, we now parent education, we suffer even basic support, right? Basic needs. We cannot, our basic needs are not met. It's just like, gosh, thank you so much. I just feel so grateful for this opportunity. We can talk about this.
I would also say that the thing that disgusts me is, I mean, I love children, don't get me wrong. But in our wider policy value world, it always comes down again to, but what difference does this make to children, to children's outcomes, to children's development and children's well-being, children's health, stuff like that, which is great. I mean, that's what our society should do. But somehow it skips over the importance of parents. And and this is what, unfortunately, and again, this is not a slam against early childhood, but I always thought that the teacher folks who were the most sensitive to parent development and parent needs were like the early childhood teachers, and especially the early childhood special ed teachers. And they're not, and it's just training, right? I mean, the emphasis of training is more again on children's development and not on the parents who, So, and so again, I just come back to our raising the value of parents in our society, and not minimizing the work that we do as parents and how hard it is. And that truly, that if parents aren't supported, you won't have positive outcomes for kids. Otherwise, if that's truly what you believe, well, then just like put kids in institutions and, ignore it and send us all to work if we're adults, right? And so we don't, because this comes full circle back to the kind of the data thing. The closest program I've seen or in the world related to ECFE are this playgroup model out of Australia. And they too kind of suffer because they have a certain amount of money from their government that they use to get these playgroups going. It's a similar model. They just don't have licensed parenting educators and licensed early childhood teachers. It's more sort of paraprofessional. But they have that, but for more indigenous populations or harder to reach audiences or whatever. The important thing for me, though, is looking at how do they evaluate this program, because it too is government funded and has been going for more than 40 years. In fact, the playgroup model in Australia started very similar to the time that ECFE did. And so I'm always curious, well, if we're not doing such a great job of demonstrating the value of ECFE, how are like programs that are also built on this sort of low dose, long-term model of parent engagement and relationship building, and really seeing that as critical to children's success. And there's a report, and I'm happy to share this, that was done by one of the Australia think tanks. But one of the things that they measured with these playgroups effectiveness was around parent social capital. And they looked at the value of parents' connections to each other and what that meant for the empowerment of especially mothers, how encouraging mothers to re-enter the workforce, the kind of learning and resources that parents could exchange. And the cool thing for me was that their government valued that, right? That their government valued that parents were empowered, that they valued that mothers felt better about themselves to return to work, right? That yes, they looked at, is this good for babies and 2-year-olds and 4-year-olds, and are they going to quality preschools and yada, 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 right? But they also cared in their assessment of value that the parents were better off. And that's what we don't do. That's what we don't have a real value for. And Anyway, I'm off again. It's just, I wish we could do better at that to get, and unfortunately in our current political climate, and getting the ears of legislators on that issue is going to be really hard, right? And so one of my parting, I would just say, find what matters to the people who make the decisions and spin ECFE around that. So if they care about kids learning, spin it that way. If they care about parent employment, spin it that way. If they care about teenage moms, finishing school or something, spin it that way. But find the values and the outcomes that legislators think that their voters care about and spin ECFE in that way. So.
Perfect, Susan.
Melissa?
Thank you so much. Oh God, you never off. I mean, I just so admire. You mentioned, like you said, you love children. I guess maybe you do not have a child yourself, right? So I too, right? I do not know, if you have your child. I mean, so the thing I feel
doesn't admit it.
Yeah, the thing is, I feel like that is maybe if from Christianity faith, right, to explain that is God's plan. You do not have your own child, so you have the time and energy to work for all the parents, and also it's really, sometimes I think of this and I feel, yeah, I'm determined. I love children so much. That is why, I may not help my own child. That is, yeah. Thank you so much, Susan.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Yuji. I do have a child, by the way, and I also have my pug, who
Sorry.
my parents word on her. Well, anyway, so thank you all. Wow, what an absolutely wonderful time together. Thank you, everybody. So I'll see you next week. I'll be posting this. Let's use the listserv and share stuff that way. And if you heard about something today, oh yeah, and Sarah, thank you. Happy Valentine's Day to everybody, however you celebrate it. And Ellen, you had kicked us off in your lovely red shirt today. So, okay, everyone, well, stay warm.
One more thing, you guys, I think 196, all their parent educators did a PLC, and they created a rubric that measures parent comments. I can't remember how they did it. And I don't remember who I got it from. And I don't think I'm free to share it. Like, I think you'd probably have to ask whoever created it. But I know, Julie, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. And I don't have it either, but I think it is, I'm pretty sure it was 196. And I know so when we do our parent surveys at the end, we've started that too in 199, but we have a lot of mentors in 196. So I do think that's where we got it.
Yeah. So they basically, like, I can't remember what they did it, but they basically they tried to get more data from a paragraph. How did ECFE help you? What did it do exactly for you? And they were able to pull that together into data that looked really good on paper. Then besides 5, yes, I liked it. 5, it was fun for me. 5, it was great for my child. Do you know what I mean? So I have it, but I asked for it from one of them. But I will do a digging and find out who did that. And then if Greta and Yuji, I'll send it to you guys, and then you can, I'll put whoever sent it to me. And then you guys can ask if you want to duplicate it.
Cool. I'm sorry. I was just thinking there's one thing that you can do as a parent educator is maybe along the way during the semester, asking parents to write down what's one thing that hit you today, just so you have data. Because I find at the end of the semester, they don't know what to say in those evaluations, and they don't have any, that's trickier. I guess I should just say it that way. So that's a nice thing when you're doing parent ed, to do it along the way somehow. Just put, have a little piece of paper, they write it down. Because it's hard getting data at the end. I'm just going to say that if you're looking for some real practical ideas, if you're not already doing that, but yeah.
You could do a Jamboard, or is it Jamboard or Padlet, where it's anonymous, you put it up on the board and parents can shoot up with their phone what they're doing, and then it's on your Jamboard
Well,
or
that's
your
a
Padlet. I'm
great
not sure.
idea too.
So,
Mhm.
especially in COVID without paper and pens and whatever.
Yeah, and yeah, another way. I love it. That's a great idea.
Well, we could do an entire session just on evaluation ideas. Quick and simple things, but creative things. Actually, that would be a great resource. You know, Shannon and I were just talking about the 5946 class, and many of you have taken that, the assessment and evaluation. And, but honestly, I'm with Greta, you know, getting, you know, collecting data, especially at the end. You don't know how many people are going to be there and all the kinds of things, but there's so many creative ways. I know Elizabeth Hudachek in St. Paul has a gratitude tree, and parents just will write. She has a big stick, a big branch in her thing, and then parents will just write what they're grateful for, and they hang it on the tree. It is such an amazing visual too, because you walk in and you see all these different color, you know, slices, and then you can read each one, you know, and it's just like, I would pick that up and just like shove that into some legislator's face and say, this is why they come to ECFE, you know. But yeah, so if you guys would ever be interested in having a session to talk about, you know, easy, quick, fun, creative evaluation strategies, we are all about that. All right, so, well, thank you, everybody. You rock, as usual. So get out there, join your other little fishes, and go swallow that, whatever the big fish is in your life. So we'll see you next week.
Thank you. Happy Chinese New Year. Today is Chinese New Year. Bye-bye.